Hi everyone, Bandanner here. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel and the Broken Arrow Open Beta. Please remember to hit that subscribe button down below. It's free if you haven't already. Today we're taking a look at the Russian units, much like we did with the USA units. A very basic, quick overview of what the units are and what you should generally do with them and the weapon types. This is not in any way, shape or form for people who are military buffs or people who have played these types of games before, because you already know everything I'm going to talk about most likely. Maybe it's a refresher for some people who haven't touched it for a long time though. But it's certainly not going to go into any detail about how individual weapon systems work. I'm going to be keeping it super basic. If a weapon hits the side or front or back of a tank, I'm going to say that. If it hits the top of a tank, I'm going to describe it as that. I'm not going to describe the mechanics of the weapon, okay? It's really just to keep it simple. For someone to get into the game, play it, and have some fun. I'm not going into military doctrine or anything like that. That out of the way, let's get straight into it. So, Recon tab, Recon units, as we discussed in the USA deck, are designed to be long-range scouting units, but some of them can put up a bit of a fight. So here you have the Razvedka. They're a small squad. You mainly want to keep them at range if you can. They do have a short-range anti-tank weapon if it comes down to it, and you can upgrade them to be a suppressed squad as well, so they'll make less noise when they're shooting the enemy. Obviously they can engage in infantry combat and close-range anti-vehicle combat, but generally speaking you don't want to get them into too many fights. You want to mainly use them as a recon team. They come in a range of different vehicles. The BMD-2 is basically a little infantry fighting vehicle, but it's transportable by air. It's also amphibious, but you'll see it has the airdrop symbol there, so you can drop it out of a plane. This comes with a 30mm autocannon. It can be upgraded to come with a Konkurs anti-tank missile launcher, or a BMD-2 upgrade, which basically makes it the Cornet missile launcher. So it's a slightly better launcher. Keeps that 30mm cannon. These things kept at reasonably long range. Obviously, with the autocannon, they can engage smaller vehicles and infantry, though the tanks should be engaged with the Cornet at maximum range, or the other anti-tank missile if you take one. The BMD-4M, similar unit, but this time it gets a 100mm tank gun, effectively, or cannon, rather than just a rapid-fire autocannon. It has both side by side, as you can see on the unit there. It also gets a machine gun. As you'll notice, a lot of these get a little machine gun. I'm not going to mention it all the time. I'm sure you can tell that that's a machine gun by now. Can do an armor upgrade here, but no changes to the weaponry. So this one, obviously you can use it with the cannon, but don't assume that this cannon is going to do loads of damage to an enemy tank. It's not designed for that, and it is lightly armored, so a tank will rip this apart. The Typhoon VDV is a lot like a Humvee. It's a armored jeep, basically. It comes with a Cord HMG, but it can be upgraded to an autocannon. Again, these should be kept at a longer range where possible. The autocannon makes it look ridiculous, by the way. To be honest, when it comes to this particular vehicle, I tend to bring it in just with the basic heavy machine gun and get it in, drop some units off, and then get it out the map very quickly. You can use it to fight stuff, though. You can. It can shoot at infantry and buildings and stuff. BTRD, this is a box on tracks. It is just an armoured personnel carrier, nothing special. It either gets a little machine gun, or you can upgrade it to have a Cord, heavy machine gun, and an automatic grenade launcher, making it effective against infantry in buildings, but again, you want to keep it at a long range if you can. I believe the maximum range of the grenade launcher is 800 meters, so you kind of want to keep it at that distance against infantry in buildings. Minimize the risk of them being hit by short-range anti-tank weapons that will do a lot of damage. The final option here is a transport chopper. These are VDV units, so they are airborne, so they can come in a chopper. This, like the choppers we saw in the American deck, comes with a couple of different options for weapons if you so wish. You can upgrade it to have Concon anti-tank, Attacker anti-tank, or Igla anti-air missiles. That is an option if you wish. And then the middle pylons you can have empty, you can have 40 rockets, or you can stick it with some gun pods. This is a transport chopper. It's up to you how you use it. Just bear in mind it is big, and obviously a big nasty target for anti-air units. Sniper squad. These guys come with a couple of different loadouts. They can have long-range rifles. You want to keep these at maximum range. They're good at lasing targets and things like that, being very stealthy, perhaps behind enemy lines. You can even bring them in suppressed, so they make less noise if you so wish. Again, same vehicle options. VDV Spetsnaz. These guys, as default, come with the Burr thermobaric launcher and are basically an anti-infantry squad. The Burr launcher can, in fairness, fire at vehicles and helicopters, but it's also very effective against infantry. So these guys very good at getting into a bit of a scrap. They are, of course, Recon, so you want to try and keep them alive where you can. You can upgrade them, or change them out, I should say, to have a Metis anti-tank launcher, which this guy has at the edge here. Now, that is a medium range anti-tank missile. There are two different versions of the Metis in the game. We'll see another one shortly. This one is 800 meters. These guys are good for sticking in a building if you take them with that and acting as a defensive unit and keeping an eye on an area. ATGMs, missiles that are firing out at tanks and things, can be quite scary and put people off attacking an area. Again, same transport vehicles, just in a different order for some reason. Down here we have a range of vehicles. The Rheostat, which has no weaponry at all and should be kept at maximum range out of harm's way, but will give you a decent line of sight and can also laser target. The BRM-3K, again, you want to mainly keep this at a long range. It can engage in a fight because it has a 13mm autocannon with the standard weapons package there for 5 points. You could remove that completely and just have the laser and a machine gun. Or you can upgrade it to have a 57mm gun, or indeed a 57mm gun and an anti-tank missile launcher. But bear in mind that for some reason, if you go up to this level, it loses its laser designation ability. I'm not sure why. Laser with the autocannon, but as soon as you got to 57mm, you lose that laser. I'm not sure if that's a mistake or not. Next up, you got the Sama, which is a very little Jeep. For some reason, it claims it has 10 side armor. I don't believe it because, well, there's no doors on the damn thing. So I'm not sure how it has side armor. But this thing comes with a few different weapons. The Cord, machine gun, an anti-infantry grenade launcher, effectively. It can fire at vehicles, but it's not going to do a lot. A minigun, or it can have the Metis M1. So this is the other Metis launcher I was talking about, and this one has slightly longer range at 1,100 meters. Next up is a Recon tank. Much like we saw on the American deck, this should be kept at maximum range where possible. It doesn't have any long-range missiles, so some of the Russian tanks, you will note, because of their cannon type, have long-range missiles available to them. This one just seems to have a more effective or specialist heat round rather than a missile. This is just a direct shot and is only 1,400 meters. Some of them, as we get down to the vehicle tab, will have missiles, and I'll mention that again there. So it's a tank. Like any other tank, it can be used for assaulting. It has a lot of front armor, can be quite scary, but also it's a recon vehicle, so be careful with it. Then in this tab, you have a couple of drones for recon as well. You can upgrade them with some weapons, anti-tank missiles for the forepost. The Orion, again, has an optics package upgrade to make it see even further, and you can upgrade it with various missiles on its pylons as well. This thing, obviously, again, you want to keep it at range. It's very susceptible to anti-air defense weapons. Recon, as ever, should be kept at range where possible. You want to try and keep this stuff alive so you can see enemy units. Okay, infantry, there's a lot to choose from here. The first 4 infantry, I believe, are part of the armoured brigade, so they get different vehicles. So first up, you have a team with the AGS-40, so they are an automatic grenade launcher squad. They get 2 automatic grenade launchers. These guys, obviously, very good against infantry, can fire at vehicles as well. Maybe they'll do some damage to the light vehicles, but they're mainly effective against infantry. Pretty good at clearing buildings. What is interesting about these squads are the vehicles they get. So the B-10 Kurganets is a reasonably armoured transport, not super heavily armoured, but reasonably heavily armoured. It can have an APS, active protection system, for shooting down incoming missiles. Its standard weapon is a heavy machine gun, but it can be upgraded with the Boomerang module, which gives it a 30mm autocannon and a cornet launcher for anti-tank missiles. You can also then upgrade it if you want to the Epocha module, which gives it a 57mm cannon a cornet launcher again, and also a bulat launcher, which is at the bottom here, and that is an anti-infantry and vehicle rocket launcher. So that's an interesting little piece of kit as well. It's just sticking up at the back there. So, interesting upgrade options. Then there is the T-15 Barbaris. The T-15 Barbaris. Then there is the T-15 Barbaris. This thing is basically a transport, but with tank armor. Look at the armor on this thing, especially the front. It's basically a tank shell, okay? It is the hull of a tank, but they've made it so that it transports troops. I bet it's a bit of a squeeze in there. It also comes equipped with quite a nice weapons package as default, 30mm autocannon and a cornet system, but it can be upgraded to the Kinzel module, which gives it a 57mm autocannon and also an attacker missile launcher, which is better than the other launcher. So this thing actually is like a small tank, just without a tank cannon. It's really scary, and you will see the meta players bringing this in large quantities, because it is that strong. It is hard to kill. Pretty scary unit for a transport. Then you get the K-16 Boomerang. This thing is a wheeled transport, comes with a Cord machine gun as default, can be upgraded to the Boomerang module to get that autocannon and those anti-tank missiles, and the Cord HGM. Also gets a defense package, so you can upgrade it with armor, an active protection system, or both at the same time. These vehicles are actually very strong. I like bringing them in. They're good when they're kept at range for the most part, with the exception of perhaps the Barbaris, which you want to keep at range of its cannon, perhaps at 1,100 meters. Obviously, against tanks, you kind of want to stay at launcher range, the attacker anti-tank missile range, but against other units, you can get this thing closer and do some serious damage. It's pretty scary when you have a few of these coming at you. Okay, other units here are the Motostrelki squad. These guys, standard line infantry, lots of anti-infantry weaponry in there, good for a scrap. I will note they also get a very good anti-tank missile launcher. It's short range, but look at the penetration on this thing, 1,000 millimeters. That's pretty scary, even for a tank. So that's a pretty good squad, and they get 4 of those things, so they're going to dish out some damage if you get near them with a vehicle. Next up are basically an engineer squad. They're mainly for close range operations, lots of anti-infantry weapons, and their RPG launcher is not specifically anti-tank, it is an anti-infantry weapon as well. It has a HE warhead. It's going to do damage to infantry close range too. And then finally, with this little set, we get the Verba, which is an anti-air missile launcher. This makes them a man-pad team. This thing has a decent range, 2,100 meters. They are very expensive though, but they fire very rapidly, very scary to helicopters. Again, same vehicles, just in a different order. Then you get the VDV units. So these are the quote-unquote airborne units. So you get the AGS-30 squad, so slightly smaller grenades, but a grenade launcher squad nonetheless, good against infantry and buildings. They come with similar vehicles as we've seen in the Recon tab. The only difference is this one, the BTR, which is just a box, but you can upgrade it to have a anti-air gun, which makes it a Scrizette. This one has 2 people in. Then you get the 2M, which makes it slightly more automated. I'm not sure if that changes the stats very much. Let's have a look. Effective range 1,000 meters. Effective range 900 meters. So it gives it a bit better range and stuff like that. You can also upgrade it to have Igla missiles as well, making it even more effective against choppers and aircraft. VDV DSH, standard infantry squad this one. Good against infantry, and also they do have an anti-tank weapon for short range, which isn't too bad at 650 millimeters. Igla squad anti-air squad again, man-pad team. They only get 1 Igla though. Fires reasonably fast still, but not quite as scary as the Verba squad up there. Then you've got the Cornet squad. Oh, I should note that the Igla squad can come in the Scrizette vehicle, which is basically a BTR ZD. It's just a different vehicle with that gun on again. And again, you can upgrade it. But it's very similar to the BTR MDM we saw there, okay? Nothing too different. Next up is a Cornet squad. They're an anti-tank squad. They get the Cornet, or you can upgrade it to the Cornet M. The Cornet, as we can see here, 1600 meters, 1000 millimeters heat penetration. And if you upgrade it, same distance, but it has 1200 millimeter heat penetration. So just another option. This does get a different option for vehicle as well. It can come in the BTR RD robot. It's basically just another missile platform. It's the BTRD, but with a little launcher on top, you see. Cornet missile. You can upgrade it to the Cornet M as well if you want that extra upgrade. Then you get the VDV squad with a Metis launcher. These have the Metis M1, the longer range variant at 1,100 meters. Again, they're a squad for sticking in a building and acting as a defensive unit to some extent to protect an area from incoming vehicles. So, for me, in this particular set of infantry, anything that is an anti-air squad, very good for sticking in a tall building and defending an area, and the same goes for the anti-tank missile launchers such as the Cornet and the Metis. But obviously you can use these squads to assault as well and push up to an area, but just bear in mind that infantry out in the open die very quickly. Next up, is the vehicle tab, getting ahead of myself. Terminator, scary looking unit, has an autocannon and anti-tank missiles, can be upgraded to also have the grenade launchers which appear at the front here, just down there. This thing, very scary unit, kept at range against tanks and obviously can close the distance a bit against infantry. This again is basically on a tank shell because it has very high armor. So something just to bear in mind. You can also upgrade it to have additional reactive armor, which gives it more protection on the sides against heat rounds. So very scary little unit. Very similar in some ways to the T-15 we saw elsewhere. Then the Cornet D1, it's just a missile launching platform. Cheap little vehicle. Obviously you want to keep this at maximum range. You can change it to have the optics and Cornet M as standard, or it can have just lots of Cornet missiles, which obviously reduces the penetration damage. Then you got the Sprut SD, which is basically an armoured transport with a cannon on top. It's very lightly armoured, but it does have this proper tank cannon that you see on the tanks as well. And I think I mentioned earlier that some of the tank cannons in the Russian arsenal can also fire missiles, and you do see this has the Invar lead pursuit missile, so this has a longer range at 1500 meters than the tank cannon does. The tank cannon can only fire at 1300 with its shells, but if it fires the missile it has a longer range. Something to bear in mind, but you won't see these used too often because they have very light armor. The Sturm S, again, very lightly armored anti-tank unit. Can either have the Concon or the Attacker. Okay, onto the actual main battle tanks. So this is the Armata. It is the big, modern, heavy tank. This thing you probably won't be very familiar with, but basically, again, standard 125mm cannon, 1400 meter range, 1400 meter range on the other shell, but then it does have the missile, which is 1500 meters, so it gives it a little bit of an extra edge against some tanks, because Western tanks in general, for example, won't have a missile. They'll be relying on their cannon, which probably won't have that range. T-80U, something you might be more familiar with from movies and things like that. This thing, again, relies on its cannon. There are some variants here. The UM2, which gives it an active protection system. The standard UM, which improves its visibility range, or its sight range, I should say, and also its armor. And then the T-80UA, which gives it the same as the T-80UM, but also with some electronic countermeasures rather than an active protection system. T-90, again, something you might have seen in movies and TV and things like that, a bit more of a familiar tank. This thing, again, mainly relying on the cannon. It does have the missiles again. There are different variants, the 92 variant or the 2006 variant. Difference here being an armor change and also a change in the cannon to some extent, but it's the same type of cannon really. It's not important to go into that difference for this video. T-90M, again, a tank you may be familiar with. It's just got more armor than a T-90A. You can upgrade its armor to have ERA, and active protection system, or both an active protection system and some ERA on the side. And then weapons, you can change it from having just 2 smaller machine guns or medium machine guns to one of those being a heavy machine gun. But again, you're mainly going to be relying on this tank for its cannon and its armor and, you know, general armored pushes. Okay, so in the support tab, you've got a few different types of vehicles. You've got transports or supply transports, you've got artillery, and you've got anti-air. So let's have a look at the supplies first. So you've got the KAMAZ and the KAMAZ AZ. These are basically a small truck and a big truck. They can carry both supplies and infantry, designated by the supply thing and then seats. It's sort of a one or the other thing, in that it could carry some supply and infantry, but obviously you're mainly going to use it to carry one or the other in most situations, I expect. Anti-air wise, you've got the Tunguska, which has anti-air guns and also missiles. If you upgrade it to the top missile, the missiles can also shoot down incoming ballistic missiles. Otherwise, the missile options only shoot down helicopters and aircraft. Next up, if we go through these units, we have the Buk M2, which is a radar anti-air piece. You can upgrade it to have longer range and more missiles by making it the Buk M3. The Derevisia, which is basically an anti-air gun, 57mm. This one can engage everything because it is radar, including incoming ballistic missiles. You can also upgrade it to have the Sosna missiles instead of the gun, which this can't fire at ground targets, bear in mind, unlike the gun, but obviously missiles are pretty effective against helicopters, ballistic missiles, and aircraft. So another option. In terms of how you would use these, the Tunguska can be brought near the front line. The Sosna, or the 57mm gun version, definitely could be brought near the front line as well. The Buk you want to keep further back. The Strela is another anti-air unit which gets a couple of different missile options. This one again can be brought nearer the front line to dealing with helicopters. Then you get the S-300, which is your big radar AA, a bit like the Patriot system we saw in the American deck. This can either come with 4 missiles at 3,800 meter range or 2 giant missiles of 4,500 meter range. Pretty scary to aircraft and also ballistic missiles. You also get the Tor M, which is another anti-air unit. You get quite a few here. This one is radar, fires missiles out the top, can engage everything including ballistic missiles, and the upgrade is for 16 missiles. So of these units, the Tor, the S-300 and the Buk definitely want to be kept behind your lines in a safe place. The others can probably be pushed up a bit. Then in terms of artillery, you have some mortar units. So we have the Vina, we have the Drok, we have the Nona. All of these are basically mortar units of various types. These can be brought nearer the front line to be a bit more accurate. And then you have long-range artillery. So you have the big artillery piece here. Obviously very long range, 152mm piece. Well, reasonably long range. This also gets different upgrades, so you can have the high explosive rounds. The cluster rounds, which we discussed before, explode above a target into lots of little shells or lots of little bomblets. Good against hitting the top armor of vehicles. And you can also have an extended range version, which gets the long range laser guided munitions. So a couple of different options there. You also get the Grad launcher, which is a long-range rocket launcher or missile launcher, however you want to phrase it. 120mm rockets in here. You can choose between high explosive, cluster, and incendiary rockets, which incendiary rockets do top-down armor to vehicles and also set fire to the area with like a napalm effect. So it burns the area continually after they drop. So if the units don't move out of the way, they continue to burn. And then finally down here you get the TOS-1 Buratino. So this is a thermobaric launcher by default. You can change its weapon package to be the TOS-1A, which gives it longer range but has less missile. And again, these are thermobaric. Top-down attack on vehicles, but they do damage to a wide area and will do a lot of damage to infantry as well because they have a big blast radius. And there you go, support tab. Lot in there. Helicopter tab, obviously you have your attack choppers and your transport. Quick look at the transport. So this is one of them. This is a cargo, as it's called. Quite obvious it's a transport. You have the Mi-35M, which is technically a transport, but also has weapons. So you can give various weapons to this. It can have a protection system, so it can have some electronic countermeasures and stuff. You can put stuff on the pylons, including anti-tank. Again, rockets are anti-tank on this one, or sorry, rockets are anti-air on this one, the port side pylons, and the other pylons are either rockets or gun pods. So a few different options on that chopper. The M8-2NM, this is just an attack chopper, it doesn't have any seats. Lots of different options again, weapons-wise. The Mi-28N, again, an attack chopper with various different options. The Mi-26 is a transport, doesn't have any weapons options. And the Ka-52, which is the big, scary attack chopper, can carry lots of different weapons on its various pylons. Lots of options for you there. Nothing much to say about them. Attack helicopters are used for attacking, good for clearing up units behind your lines, obviously susceptible to anti-air units. And finally, you've got the air tab. Now, we have the big IL-76MD transport plane. This is for carrying lots of supply, lots of units, or lots of infantry. It's very, very big. Very big. Doesn't have any weapons other than some guns, which I believe... Where are those guns on this thing? Is it on the back? It has guns somewhere. It might be on the front here. I'm not entirely sure. It does have a couple of guns, as you can see there. But basically this is for power dropping forces in. Then you have another big jet, which is the Tu-160 bomber. So this can carry various different weapons in its bomb bay. It can either carry thermobaric bombs, it can carry Fab 1500, Fab 9000, Cab 1500, which are laser guided. It can have cluster missiles, so long range cluster missiles, or it can have even longer range ballistic missiles. Lots of options, okay? Obviously all very expensive, but this jet or bomber can be devastating if you get a good run, but everyone will try and shoot it down. But at least with the missiles, the KH-101s, these things you can fire at 10,000 meter range, so you can actually keep it behind your lines and try and fire at long range. Then you get the very modern Su-57. Very nice jet. This has various weapon loadouts, as we've seen before. I won't go through them all. Just to say, you know, you've got cluster variants, you've got missiles, ballistic missiles, you know, you've got a cruise missile up at the top there. There's lots of different options here. I'll let you experiment yourself. Where is that even? 59, there you go. It's a cruise missile, top attack on armor, things like that. Lots and lots of options. The Su-35, again, lots of options. Su-34, lots of options. The big one to mention for this is it can carry anti-radiation missiles. So these are seed missiles, the ones that take out enemy radar anti-air systems. So these things, the KH-31s, have a long range, 4,500 meters, and will engage at targets on the ground which are emitting a radar signature. Su-30, again, multi-role fighter, lots of different weapons. And then the Su-25, quite an old thing now, mainly used for its anti-tank capabilities, but can come with a variety of weapons, including some anti-air. Slow compared to some of the other aircraft, however. And there you go, that's the Russian deck. Aircraft, as ever, should be kept preferably away from enemy anti-air. Make good use of things like the Su-34 and its seed missiles to take out enemy radar AA. And that's a quick run through of everything in this deck, which has probably gone on for far too long. But thank you for watching, everyone. Please do like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all soon.